Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. Once again, I'm Michael Simon from Macworld filling in for a real host, and I'm joined with Ken Mingus from Computer World. And as
You're
you
a
might
real
have
host.
guessed,
Well, come on, you're a real host
I'm I play one on the internet apparently.
on YouTube.
As you guessed, today this week is all about WWDC. Apple had the keynote at 10 a.m. Pacific on Monday, and it was jam-packed. It
I
was
was
like
I was
like it
really
was like
surprised at the amount of information they were able
yeah.
to dole out about the software and the hardware in an
I mean,
hour and a half.
there's that, and without like the usual rigmarole
Yeah.
of applause breaks and demos, it is just like non-stop announcements. Like it's really as a writer, as at Macworld we cover all of it obviously, and it is just a lot to digest in an hour and a half. It's just like rapid fire.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean,
yeah, there was a ton of stuff that they talked about.
I was just going to say maybe what we can do, given that there was so much to talk about, is maybe pick one or two things from like iOS
Yeah,
16, iPad OS, Mac OS, Ventura, as we now have
Ventura. Yep.
Ventura, yeah. And then of course the hardware was, sort of surprising too. So let me start because I don't want to get you off on a rant, Michael, but we have talked so many times about
iPad.
the iPad
Yep.
and your concern that it doesn't really fit the bill anywhere, that it could do so much more.
Hmm.
And, there was a lot of discussion this week about iPad OS and some changes in how you can do things on the iPad. In particular, Stage Manager, which for some reason I keep wanting to call Stage Fright. I don't know why, but Stage Manager, things like display zoom, things like that. Does that go at least part of the way toward alleviating a lot of the complaints you've had about the iPad in
I
the
mean,
past?
it's a good start, I think. I mean, Stage Manager, oddly
Which is
enough, was
also in
introduced.
Mac OS,
Yeah,
right?
in fact, it was introduced as a Mac OS feature.
Yeah,
Like when we first learned of it earlier in the keynote,
yeah,
it was for Mac OS, and then they said, later on they said, oh, and it's also coming to iPad. It seems more natural on the iPad since multitasking on the iPad, as we talked about, is a mess.
yeah.
And this brings floating windows, which is awesome. This brings a more intuitive, at least it seems. I haven't tried it yet. I don't have a dev account, but it seems to be more intuitive. Roman on Macworld, he checked it out on the Mac and he liked it. I just don't know how many people are going to use it on the Mac because it's a Mac. We've been doing the same thing for 30 years. I mean, that's institutional multitask. Like we know what we're doing
Yeah.
on the Mac. They've tried Mission Control, Launchpad. Like we don't use those things because, or at least I don't, because I have my workflow on the Mac. I don't know what Stage Manager brings to the equation. But on the iPad, it's a whole new ballgame. And it looks good. It looks like a start to like actual real deal productivity on the iPad. And it's limited to the M1 processor machines, which is the two iPad Pros and the iPad Air.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to separate that too, which is good.
To make it more of a pro model. Yeah, yeah. I will
Yeah.
be honest with you. I have been trying Stage Manager
Okay.
both on Mac OS Ventura and on my iPad Pro. And I agree with you. It's more of a revelation on the iPad than it is on the desktop. I mean, I turned it on just because I really wanted to say, okay, let me just try this new way of working with Windows and how things get grouped. It may be right now because it's obviously the first beta of this, but it feels to me when I'm grouping windows so that when they launch, you've got several different, apps opening at once. Sometimes it's like the apps that I think are going to be there or not, or like if I open Safari and I've got two different Safari windows, it's like one window's kind of hanging off on the side of the desktop and the other one's the one in front of me. So I'm not quite sure. I may be doing something wrong,
Well, it's
graphically.
also it's a beta, so
It's
it's
about
possible
exactly
that
that's what I mean.
yeah.
So I'm not in any way digging it. On the iPad, however, it really is more of a revelation because you can have separate windows for different apps. You can move them around. You can resize them. You can position them in different places. And I mean, of course, it's only been like 3 or 4 days here that I've had a chance to play with it. But I think people who really do want to see the iPad be more of a productivity powerhouse, I think they're going to like it. I do.
Yeah, it's definitely a good start. It bothers me a little bit that the iPad Air has that M1 processor because this feels like a pro feature. Like if it was strictly for the iPad Pro models with the
Yeah.
M1 processor, I'm cool with that. But the iPad Air, for whatever reason, got instead of the A15, got the M1. So those three models are part of Stage Manager. And yeah, it's a good first step. Next step, I want to see when you dock it, like that type of thing happens. Like you go into like a whole new interface that's
You mean
intuitive
when
and
you
keyboard
connect it to a
friendly.
larger
When you
screen?
put it on a keyboard,
Okay.
when you dock it to the Magic Keyboard, like I was hoping for like some kind of a desktop mode or something like that. But Stage Manager is good. It's really good how it works with an external display. Like you can have windows here on your iPad and then a bunch more windows on your extra. That's a new feature for uh, intuitiveness
Hmm.
for interface because before the iPad, hooking an iPad to an external display was kind of useless. A couple of apps gave you like different controls, but for the most part, it mirrored your display and gave you
Just
nothing.
mirroring everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a step toward that as well. So yeah, they're clearly thinking it's still I won't call it a baby step, but it's not a leap. It's a mid step.
It's a solid step forward.
Yeah.
Something else too on the iPad that I actually really like is Display Zoom, because I mean it allows you basically to change the resolution so you can see more of the apps that you're using on the screen.
Mhm.
And that's something that, the fixed resolution that the iPad has had in the past, it just felt a little like you were locked in. So I immediately changed mine to, get as much on the screen as I can, which I tend to do anyway.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not sure everybody will want to do that. It does make, text smaller, things like that. But I really like that.
Yeah. Definitely a good step.
Okay.
And we'll see what comes next. So,
Okay.
you know,
Maybe we should jump to iOS
yeah.
16. Maybe the lock screen, is that the most prominent
I mean,
change?
I'd say so. I mean, it's a pretty big change. Um, and it kind of harkens always on display for the iPhone 14 Pro. Like we're almost that's almost certain to happen now. And what it'll be is the numbers, the date, and the widgets will be in black and white when the screen's off.
Tell me why you think that. Okay, I sort of assume the same thing, but
Yeah.
why does the lock screen changes automatically mean we're going to get an always on
Well,
display?
because like, why change it if it's not? I mean, quite frankly, the lock screen itself isn't. You still got to pick up the phone. You still got to turn the phone on. You still got to use Face ID and unlock it. So you're just staying at that screen for no real reason.
Right.
But if you can glance at your phone and not touch it, and all those things are visible, then we're talking.
Okay.
So, like the changes are nice, but I don't know how much time you spend on your lock screen. I mean, I glance at it here and there, but usually I'm unlocking my phone when I pick it up. So I think the glanceability factor is what you want. But that said, maybe you will use your lock screen more because it is nice. Apple did a good job here. It's obviously cribbed from Android. Like Google's doing all this stuff for a while now, but the widgets look clean. Good information. There's a widget kit so developers can get in on
That's
it.
what I was going to ask. Do you think there'll be third-party widgets? So
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
clear
there's
there
no
will
question.
be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same constraints as the iOS home screen widgets where you
Right.
gotta design them to certain parameters. But yeah, they'll be third-party widgets and um Apple, in true Apple fashion, it's customizable to a hard stop, but way more than I thought. The font, the colors, that cool picture thing where it is able to like cut out the image over the time. That's neat. Yeah, it's a very good change.
The one that I like is I actually have probably spent more time on my lock screen this week playing with these features than I have for the last 5 or 10 years. Is having you can have the background image be weather. So
Yeah,
the sunny
that's
day,
cool.
you've got a clear blue sky. If it's raining, you've got rain coming down. And I have not yet found a way to separate the wallpaper on the home screen of the iPhone from the lock screen. I think, eventually that'll be doable. I don't think it's doable, at least in this first beta. Not a big deal, just something that I've noticed, or once again, could be user error. I may not have figured out how to do it yet.
So you're saying your lock screen wallpaper has to be the same as the home screen wallpaper?
Yeah, so
That's
far.
interesting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't found a way, and I know that there's some discussion online that if you go into the system settings and go to wallpaper, you can set it there. But when I set the home screen there, then it just changes the lock screen to that same background image. But I'm a weather nut, so having the weather on
Yeah,
my
I agree.
lock screen
Um,
is really cool.
yeah, yeah. And it's now it's Apple weather. Apple, because Apple bought Dark Sky
Dark sky, it's simple.
2 years ago, I want to say. So now they renamed that to Apple Weather. They have their own API that's pulling all that stuff.
Yep.
So you won't go to like it was not reliant on the Weather Channel and things like that anymore. Um, yeah, a huge change. The other one that's really intriguing. It's not just iOS; it's all of messages. But they debuted it in iOS in that section of the keynote. The undo and the
Unsent.
editing of messages is very intriguing. I never thought that would come to iOS or iPhone first out of all the other, that seems like more like an Android feature, but intriguing. And I haven't tried it, but people in Macworld have it. You get 15 minutes to undo and so you can delete a message that was sent. And you can edit a message that was sent on
Yeah,
someone
basically
else's
you're pulling
phone.
it back. Now I did see a note that if someone's running the current version of iOS, they might still see the message. I mean, everybody for this to work, which makes sense cohesively, whoever you're sending a message to would have to be on iOS 16 in the same way that you are for you to be able to pull it back. But again, that will change very quickly in the fall because adoption rates, when the new iOS comes out, are very quick.
Yeah, and I don't the logistics of it are interesting because like you send a message, someone reads that message, and then it disappears,
I was just wondering about that. It's,
or it changes. Like,
I mean,
someone brought up privacy things like if you have an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend and you send them something and then like, I'm gonna hurt you in some way,
and then
and then
pull
you
it
delete
back.
it or edit it, and they're like, well, I never sent that, and then you start messing with them like that's not cool. It also opens up for a lot of pranks and things that you can send to people, but I would have thought it was like maybe a minute or 5 minutes at most. 15 minutes seems like a long time to plot and scheme,
Well, now is
but
it
it's a good feature.
on a sort of a related note? There's the ability in Mail to pull back an email message, but I think I saw somewhere today or yesterday that you have to do it within like 10 seconds of the initial
Yeah,
send,
which makes sense to
which is
me.
that makes sense, but you
Yeah,
better.
like if I make a typo, I know like immediately because you get those things where it'll be like something 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 then and then right below it'll say the like
Yeah.
like you made the mistake, you send it 30 seconds, maybe 15 minutes. I mean, you might as well give me a day.
Well, assuming most people read messages, I mean, unless I'm
Yeah,
literally like for now, if somebody sends me a message at the moment we're taping, I will not be reading it.
I'm gonna
But
still
most
read it. I'm on my
most
Mac. It'll
times,
come,
hey,
it'll
wait
come
a
in.
minute.
It's still
Most
here.
times, if I've got my phone in my hand or it's on the desktop, I'm reading those messages right away.
It's very
So
rare that I
yeah,
don't see a message in 15 minutes
yeah.
or immediately. Yeah, because I'm either at my Mac when they come in, or I'm on my iPhone when they come in, or something buzzes, my Apple Watch buzzes. Like I know when a message comes in. I've read it, I've seen it, and now you got to change it or delete it. I don't know.
15 minutes. I wonder that may change. Remember
That may
last year,
change.
a lot
Yeah.
of things that first rolled out with the beta last summer, they changed a lot over the summer until the final release. What did you think? And this is not necessarily an iOS thing, but with the ability to pair your camera on the iPhone with your desktop for better FaceTime communications, obviously better quality picture, whatever. Do you have to have the little thing that hang? You can just set your phone up, and as long as it's,
Yeah, that thing was very cool. It,
I thought it
it
was.
like I wonder. So one of two things happened. Either Studio Display reviews came out and Tim Cook was like, "This is unacceptable. Fix this,"
Yeah,
or they had this feature and they said, "You know what? We don't care what cameras in Studio Display because this is coming, so they're not going to need it."
yeah.
So
I
like
think
one of those
I've
two
gone
things
with
had
the
to
latter.
happen.
I don't think they just rolled this out quickly because the studio
It's
just.
a cool feature. It's an overdue feature. It seems to work like instantaneously. There's no wires. There's no setup. Um, that thing where they were able to use the ultra wide lens to see The
We could see
desktop,
the desktop
that thing broke my brain. I don't even understand how that's working.
and it looked and it didn't look the hands looked a little
It looked like you were
elongated maybe.
holding
Yeah, it's
above
why
it.
it's just like
Yeah.
oh, the camera's coming down. Yeah, exactly. That was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, it doesn't let Apple off the hook for having terrible cameras in the Mac and the studio display, but it's nice to have.
It's
And
a
yeah, I
nice
don't, as far
workaround.
as I can tell, you won't need the stand, but you're gonna want one because you naturally want the thing. You can just hold it, I guess, right? As long
Yeah.
as you're within Bluetooth range.
Um,
I think MagSafe will help there. Like there'll be MagSafe attachments that make it cool. I'm surprised Apple didn't come out with one. Maybe they will in the fall. Like a little thing that attaches to the top of the thing, and you just magnetically pop it on and pop it off. Like that's cool. But yeah, that's a neat feature. Overdue in the sense that the webcams on Macs have been bad for a while, and you're gonna go from like 1980s picture to like 2020, like the
40 to
I mean, yeah,
26.
yeah. I mean, you're using the rear camera on the iPhone is a massive upgrade over
This is going to
anything
be,
that you
you're going to be probably frightened at what people actually look like.
seriously. It's gonna be such an upgrade when you start doing like Zoom calls and stuff.
iDef can work
But
both ways. Okay, well we should keep going. Mac OS. What about Ventura jumps out at you? Again, in addition to Stage Manager.
yeah, I mean, nothing.
Yeah, Stage Manager was the big
I mean,
change.
that was really it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some small things. The the message stuff comes there, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Hold on,
Well, changes
let me
email.
pull up
Well,
our
let me
article.
let me ask you about this while you're thinking on it.
Yeah,
One of the things that came up, Johnny Evans had written about this for us at Computer World. After the event, he kind of went down the list of some of the things that businesses would be interested in. And he pointed to Freeform, which I thought was really interesting. It's a way of turning FaceTime into
maybe.
almost a whiteboard collaboration space. And I don't
Yeah,
know, whether this is something that might actually be able to give some of these whiteboard companies, digital whiteboard companies, a run for their money, or whether it's going to wind up being very granular because it's only for, Apple device users, and there's only going to be a subset of those, in the business world with Macs who might be able to use this. Therefore, it may never really, scale up very well. But in terms of how it could work, if you're an all Mac shop and you guys, you've updated to the latest and greatest, Freeform sounds like it's got a lot of potential.
it does. It was very cool. One of those weird things that they said is like coming soon, but
Yeah.
like isn't all of it coming soon? So I guess that means it's not coming with the first release of iPad OS 16 and Mac OS 16, but 13. But it was cool how they were doing it. I mean, I don't know if I'd use it, but it was cool. And I know there are a lot of those types of apps, those like mind mapping whiteboard apps, like they're fairly popular.
Well,
So yeah,
they've
it was
grown in
cool.
popularity, during the pandemic because, if you've got like a creative shop or a place where
Hmm.
people actually do use whiteboards and you're collaborating on a project, there are a number of startups and smaller companies that have pushed out a lot of products over the last couple of years because people are working remotely and they have to collaborate still, and it's a meeting place space, for employees to work together. So that's why, it sort of jumped out at me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'll be cool. But yeah, I mean, Mac OS had some stuff. The mail stuff was cool, and I don't know. I guess, I guess, Stage Manager is really it.
Yeah.
It was a pretty tame upgrade, so to speak. Passkeys is interesting. That'll be cool one, but that's going to take some time for it to roll out to everything. The Spotlight stuff,
Yep.
um, probably a precursor to Apple, at some point coming out with its own like search engine for these, I mean, it kind of has it already with Spotlight, but nothing crazy. We
Yep.
ran an article today about small things. There's a new clock and weather app on the Mac, which
Weather,
is fun. Yeah,
weather app,
weather is
app
finally
provides some
coming to other
iPad.
things than the iPhone.
And it's also on the iPad, the weather
Yeah,
app, finally.
yeah,
I know
about
that this
time.
is a weather nut. I appreciate that. Well, we definitely should talk about the hardware real quick before we wrap
Yeah, well,
up.
that
That was
was
a
the
surprise. M2
that
processor.
was the big one. Yeah, I mean, slight surprise. Like we had heard rumors that the MacBook Air was ready, but I still wasn't convinced because of all the supply chain stuff, that all the issues that they're having. But yeah, M2 processor. which is what we thought it would be. So you're getting same CPU cores, 4 and 4, high performance and high efficiency. The GPU has been upped to 8 and 10 now. It was 7 and 8 before,
Yeah.
which mirrors the A15 chip, which added that extra GPU core for the iPad Pro. So you're getting that extra GPU core times two on the M2, and RAM upgrades and other architectural stuff that should give you a roughly 20% boost in power, maybe 35 to 40% boost in graphics. Yeah, it's a small-ish boost, but a good one.
So it doesn't automatically mean that my M1 Max MacBook Pro from last fall is now
Well,
outdated.
the Max is still faster than the M2.
Okay, that's all I
This
needed.
is so it, this the M2 is faster than the M1.
Right,
The M2 is not faster than the M1 Pro, M1 Max, or obviously M1 Ultra.
right.
Like we'll get newer versions of those
That'll be the
probably next
M2
year. I would
Max
think
Pro
next year.
Ultra. Yeah,
I
okay.
I would be very surprised if they update what is it, the MacBook Pro this year.
Right.
Again, we just got that. It seems to be on an 18-month cycle now that we got the
Yep.
M2 about 18 months after the M1. So in the fall is interesting because that Mac Mini still has an Intel chip. That the
Why
high-end
is
Mac
that thing
Mini
still
that I don't
hanging
know.
out there?
And
Why are
and
they?
there's no desktop Mac with an M1 Pro. We have the M1 Max and M1 Ultra in the studio. The
Yep.
M1 Pro is only in the PowerBook. So a PowerBook. What am I saying? The MacBook Pro.
You're
So
dating your.
the M1 Pro would make sense coming to the Mac Mini, but now that they introduced the M2, I don't know. I thought for
Yeah,
sure we were
exactly.
going to
Well,
get that
you
at
wouldn't
some
put
point
the.
earlier than now.
I would think for the Mini you would go with an M2 at this point rather than an M1.
But that's not fast enough. Like if it's a higher end Mini,
Yeah, okay.
like the Mini has an M1. Okay, so you give it an MT, it's a little bit faster. Apple's still selling that upper end iPad. What am my brain is all broken. Apple's still selling the upper end Mac Mini for what is it, $1,100, right?
Rough.
I
Yeah, yeah.
think I think it's 1099, which at this point is actually slower than the M1, but that's beside the point. It has more ports and it's geared towards that higher end crowd.
Hmm.
That's the only consumer-ish level Mac that's still available. I mean, the Mac Pro, of course, but that's a different beast. That one's just sticking out there like a sore thumb because just put an M1 Pro in there. That's all we're looking for. That's it. That's all it needs.
Yeah.
They haven't done it, so they clearly have some kind of a plan for that Mac that makes no sense to me.
Well, yeah. It will, I'm sure, make perfect sense once Apple announces it. Of course, now we should talk about, so the M2 is in the MacBook Air and
Yeah,
in the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Those are the
yeah,
two laptops that
yeah.
are, and
Speaking of not making
the re-
sense,
what's that?
speaking of not making sense, but let's
What?
go over the one that does make sense. The MacBook
Okay.
Air
Yeah.
is awesome. Uh, 1199. So it's a little bit more expensive than the original, well, the M1 version, which is 999.
Yep.
But you're getting a completely redesigned,
Redesigned look, a very nice look too.
very nice. If I tell you what, if I have the 14-inch Pro, if I didn't buy this 4 months ago, whatever it was, I'd be all over that Air.
Why?
It's well, so you get the M2, which is
Okay.
a nice performance boost.
Yeah.
For the work that I do not need a MacBook Pro. I bought it because I also need a little bit more than a MacBook Air, and I wasn't buying a 13-inch Pro because I had one for work. I didn't love it, so I wanted a 14-inch screen. Now the MacBook Air has that, or
Yeah.
close to it. It's about, what's it, about a quarter of an inch bigger. I like the new design with the slim bezels. Now the MacBook Air has that. The only thing that it's missing is two extra Thunderbolt ports. It still only has two, so that's somewhat annoying. But for what you're getting for the price, plus that new midnight color is gorgeous.
When I first saw it, it looked to me like a deep, deep, deep blue.
Yeah,
I
that's kind of
was
what it
thinking
is. Yeah,
it's like is it midnight? Is that the color? That's what it's
it's called
called?
it's called midnight. Yeah, it's a very, 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 very deep blue,
Okay.
which looks black in some angles, space gray in some angles, and blue depending on the light. But yeah, very nice. I think it's going to sell very well. They're keeping around the M1. at the same price, which I thought that would get a price cut by 50 or $100. It did not. Still 999, which is fine. It's still a very good laptop.
Yeah.
And the Mac. So all right. So I said you're still only getting two ports, but you have MagSafe. So you're gaining one of those ports that you would normally use for power. So
Right.
that's solid. So you're getting the Mac. So you get MagSafe for power, and so it's really like getting a third Thunderbolt port because right now, if you have a MacBook Air, you can't hook two things up because you have to keep
You
one
only
of them
got
free
one
for
free port.
to
Yeah,
plug it
exactly.
in. Yeah. So that's a huge upgrade. A better headphone jack too for those high impedance headphones. But it's a solid upgrade. Better microphones, better speakers. Really nice design. It You don't get that wedge anymore, which is a bummer because that was like the MacBook Air's like thing.
Yeah.
Like I have to assume if Steve Jobs was still alive, he would have been like, nope, it has to have a wedge. Like that's its signature look. And it slid out of the envelope. Like it's had that since 2008 when it came
Eight.
out. I
Yeah.
mean
Eight. I
that's
got
its
to
look.
remember it. It's great.
So
Yeah.
it kind of looks a little pedestrian as far as that goes, but otherwise it's very nice.
It's very in keeping with the rest of the lineup, though. I mean, they've standardized basically on that look.
But the MacBook Air wasn't the rest of the
I
lineup.
know.
It's its own thing.
I know.
The MacBook was didn't have that look. The
Yeah.
MacBook Pro, obviously, the MacBook Air, that's what made it the MacBook Air because it was so thin. It was like that razor thin. So it doesn't have that, but it's lighter. It's lighter and thinner at the MacBook Air's thickest point. This is actually thinner. So
Yeah.
you're still getting that airiness of it. But it's nice. The MagSafe cable matches the body of the
I
computer, which
like
is
the
also
color
very
of
nice.
the
Yeah.
cables now. I may have to go out and order a cable to
Yeah.
match my MacBook Pro,
Yeah,
now.
it's nice. Yeah, right. We didn't get those with the MacBook Pro.
No, I
Yeah,
know.
it's that's cool.
What do you think of
Um,
the M2, the 13-inch MacBook Pro? You're not a big fan?
yeah. Well, what's the point? It's 1299. So it's $100 more than the
Yeah.
MacBook Air with the
Yeah.
same chip, a smaller screen, an older design, same number of Thunderbolt ports, but no MagSafe, so you're actually getting less there. Who's buying it? Because you have to have the touch bar. That's it? That's all you're getting is a touch bar
Yeah.
and slightly better sustained performance at when you're doing really high end stuff. But no one's buying that machine for that. You're going to buy the 14-inch Pro if you have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it exists. I don't get it. And if you upgrade to the 15-inch, I'm sorry, the $1,500 one, like it's identical
Yeah.
to the Air. The only thing you're not getting again is it's the touch bar, and I don't know.
Maybe there's an audience out there for the touch bar that just insists that they have to
Then
have it.
why do they take it away from the 14-inch one?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like that is just Apple always does something when it releases new stuff that just makes me go like, wait a minute. Nobody said in a meeting like, hey, why are we doing this? Who's gonna buy this thing? I just don't understand. Just let it die. It's okay. No one's gonna miss it. How many of those are they gonna sell? When you walk into an Apple store and you see that side by side with the Air,
You're going to buy the Air.
someone's gonna say, well, I want that one. No one's gonna say that. I want to pay more for this thing. Like, who's gonna say that? No, what? No, I don't. I don't get it. It makes no sense.
No.
No
We
sense.
we should make the point that neither one of these is available yet. They're
Yeah,
coming in July.
July, and
Uh,
probably my guess mid to late July.
My assumption is that they're just ramping up as much production right now as they can and trying to stockpile some of these things just so that they'll have at least one or two for sale before,
Yeah,
go
that's
to a
that's
five.
probably accurate. They're not even taking pre-orders, which is
Right.
curious.
Yeah.
Usually Macs are available like immediately.
Hmm.
iPhones you got to wait because they sell so many of them.
Yeah.
To announce a Mac and then say it's not shipping for like possibly up to 8 weeks, that means that like there's a serious crunch here.
If you want one of those MacBook Airs, you better order quickly and hope you get it by September.
Yeah.
It's like, seriously, given the supply chain.
Yeah, because the M2 processor is a new thing now. I don't know what the problems there are. Who knows? They're
Yeah.
having enough problems with the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips. So yeah, that's not surprising that they did that, but it's a little surprising that they would bother announcing it at all. Like just wait.
Right.
Like why not have another event in like July? Like nobody's gonna be upset that you have a second Apple event.
Well, before we cut it short, we should probably make note of the one bit of hardware that was not there. No discussion of anything around AR
Yeah.
glasses. Oh, now I'm seeing reports there may be a special event in January.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that.
I
Maybe.
yeah,
I mean, let's not forget January used to be Apple month because that was Macworld.
yeah.
And then they stopped doing that in 2008, I want to say. And since then, Apple hasn't really done made any noise in January. But January is the Consumer Electronics Show, and they used to always eat their lunch even though they weren't there because of Macworld. So that would be fun. A January event, I'd be down with that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too.
We also didn't get any mention of the Mac Pro, which I was surprised at. I thought for sure we'd get if we're going to get a sneak preview of something, I thought it was going to be that, but no. So we'll see what happens with the Mac Pro and if and when that gets announced.
sometime in the fall, I
I don't
guess.
know. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a press release and isn't an event.
That's a pretty limited audience. They may not want to
Yeah,
do a whole event just for that.
yeah,
We should also make the point that in terms of the beta software for iOS and iPadOS and macOS, even though developers have it now, the public beta that is expected in July, probably
July. Yeah,
sometime early to mid-July. I assume that's only, 3 or 4 weeks away.
yeah, and that they do that.
Yeah.
They give developers the first round, and then they send it out to the public. And usually, dev beta 2 is when we get it, or
Uh,
maybe even 3. But yeah, so
Cool. All in all, I was happy. Good, a
it
good
was it
show.
was a good event. Like I said, a lot of stuff. I think that this format works really well for them. Jason Snell wrote an article today basically saying that even when the pandemic's over, like I think he thinks Apple's going to stick with this
I hope they do.
because first of all, it's not exclusionary, which is good. It used to be like a mad scramble for developers to get tickets, and if you didn't get tickets, lots sorry. Now everyone could be a part of it. Yet they still invited some to the park to, hang out, and it was a kind of a best of both worlds type of a thing.
Yeah.
So I like the format. Their videos are fantastic. Like
Spot
those
on.
keynote videos are so good.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
definitely a good event. Lots of news. There'll be tons of coverage between now and September, and then we'll get the iPhones.
Yay, I'm ready.
Yeah, so are you ordering a MacBook Air?
No, no, I'm good. I'm fine with my MacBook Pro, and so no, I'm going to wait for the iPhone. That'll be my big purchase this year. Anyway, we
All
should
right.
we should probably wrap up. You want to do the outro or shall I?
You can have it today.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that to me. All right. Everybody, thanks for watching us on Today in Tech. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, be sure to head over to the YouTube channel. If you want to subscribe to us, we'd love to see you again, have you see us. So subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be reminded when new episodes are showing up. In the meantime, we'll be back next week. We'll find something to talk about then too. Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Yep.